Hi, here again with some of my musings. Today I want to share some insights that I've recently had around communication and around some interactions that I've had where recently, just in this week, I've shown up about 3 times with less than my full voice, with kind of a small version of my voice. And it's made me wonder what was in common. What was the common thread between these 3 sort of incidents? And I realized I was assuming, and there probably was, in fact, in place, a structural imbalance of power in the power dynamic between myself and the other person that was in discussion or dialogue. And it's interesting that I see that some of that kind of role disparity, power imbalance, is a cultural overlay, something that and I think kind of culturally, we have a context for what we do when we think someone is in a position of authority, whether they're a parent or a teacher or a boss or a doctor. There is built into that like a structural imbalance, a structural difference. And there's the role of the person that has more authority and the person that has less. And there are sort of assumed behaviors, I think, and degrees of power in those dynamics that hadn't really examined deeply until I found myself just really slowing down and paying attention to how uncomfortable I felt when I wanted to speak full voice, but instead found myself kind of collapsing and asking for permission and pretty much giving my power, my agency, my inner authority away to someone. So I want to talk about that a little bit and what my insights around it have been. And I'm sort of looking at my notes. I'm going to try to not look down here. One of my teachers talks about what structural authority is, and that's when somebody is in like a designated leadership position. So that might be your teacher or your parent or someone that we culturally think, a politician, a doctor, like I said, or a policeman. And so that is actually something we step into with an overlay that these 2 roles are different. There's a leadership role, and there's certain ways that we give people power as leaders, and that we reduce our own power when we think someone is in that role, when they have a structural leadership role. We give our authority over, and we collude with that. So there's this agreement that goes on at such a overall level. It's so pervasive, we don't even really name this much in our culture. We just go there. I do anyway. And so what I do in that position, when I think someone is in that position, I'll give you an example. Recently, I was on a kind of a conference call, and the woman who was leading, there was about 80 people in the call, and she said something that I was like, whoa, that doesn't feel right. There's like, I have a different way that I'd like to hear that spoken, because in the way she said it, it almost counteracted what she was teaching us. And so I wanted to share that. And, I was excited about it, but then I was also immediately sort of anxious about it. And I bravely raised my hand, and when she called on me, I was already afraid of what might happen if I shared this. And when I pulled it apart later, I realized, wow, I felt almost like I needed to confront her, like with this kind of energy, in order to share this, because it was gonna it was going to disagree or correct, or I don't know, my way of seeing it might be different from hers. And my expectation was that that might bring up for her like an authoritarian kind of reaction. So even though in this group, the idea is, and what's being invited is people's opinions, I think there's often, at least there has been in my life, a difference between what someone's inviting and what they actually accept. I don't know about you, but how many times, at least for me, where I thought, oh, full participation, and then I give that, and then somehow I immediately understand that I stepped over some line. I said something that the teacher or the leader didn't want to have brought into the space, didn't want to hear, disagreed with them. And my default reaction for that is to kind of feel ashamed, like I should have known, like there's something wrong with me. And rather than to think, oh, wait, you said you're inviting everything, but then now I bring this and, you know, you're rejecting it, and to call that out. It's like the minute I think that the minute I receive that kind of signal from the structural leader, my default is to go into fawn or freeze or collapse and immediately feel shame. And then I have no capacity at that point to even realize what just happened. That I trusted what they were saying they were offering in the group, and then there wasn't a congruence. It was like a tricky situation. So this happened also in just a personal phone call with someone where a little bit different, but I think of us as peers, and yet we wanted different things apparently in the listening. And my friend's reaction was to kind of make me wrong for not listening the way she wanted to be listened to. And my reaction immediately was to feel, I don't know, I couldn't even really feel my feelings. It was like I felt sort of blamed and shamed and, you know, pushed away, and my heart hurt. My heart hurt because I care about this person. And I was able in that situation to kind of slow things down and say, wow, this is feeling really awful to me, rather than just hang up on me now because you're not getting what you want. Wow, I'm just going to share my feelings. And lo and behold, she actually heard that, and that reconnected us. There had been this rift, and that allowed us to actually come to the place where I suggested maybe we want different things when we ask for listening, and maybe it would be wise if we actually talked about what that is before we get to the place where we didn't get what we wanted and we're blaming the other person or blaming ourselves or just feeling irritated and annoyed and unable to shift the situation. So I just want to say that in that interaction with my leader, the leader in that group, what happened was I already went into some kind of anxiety before I shared. I was already like worried that I was going to get in trouble, but I still felt like I wanted to say it. And I sort of pushed down the anxiety and said what it was. And I think she heard me, but I was actually almost unconversational at that point because I had to suppress so much myself to just kind of say the words that I didn't really have this easiness with her. I didn't really have this sense of, oh, this is a discussion. We're on a par with each other, and she's open to hearing this and really taking it in. So that made me sad, but I and I kind of recovered from that during the rest of that seminar, that class. But it bothered me. So that's why I thought, let me get to the bottom of this. What's going on here? This is linked to something else that I experienced about how much I like sharing joy and inviting people into joy. And, that can be actually, how do I want to say? It's like, can you receive my joy if you're not feeling already safe? If you're not already in a place where you could access your own joy, then there's no receptivity for my joy, and there isn't room for you to accept and share and find your own joy in resonance with mine. So I'm wondering if you have had, and if you're aware of experiences where you assume your voice is welcome, only to find out that when you do speak up, you're subtly admonished or overridden or overpowered or shamed. And for me, that experience has really impacted me. And I see that this deep part of me wants to be on a level playing field with when I'm interacting and in dialogue, but yet I'm wary because I've been tricked a lot, or so it feels like. You say, what do you have to say? And then I say, and they're like, and I get punished. And so what to do about that? And I think my interaction with my friend has given me some clues. And that is, at least in the way that our culture is set up right now, if I am coming into a situation that feels like there's already a power imbalance, and first I'll approach it from, let's say, I'm the student or I'm the participant. For me to really feel safe expressing, I need to know what are the guidelines, at least some basic guidelines. If I don't know, then I'm hesitant. It just doesn't really feel safe to me. If I say this, am I welcome? Really? Not just, yes, you're welcome, they tell me, and then I'm not. I don't want to get that kind of sideways slamming. So it's important, I think, for me, if I'm unsure, to wait and then find out, or really look at guidelines or ask for guidelines so that I can start to feel where's the sort of safe zone emotionally for me where I can bring myself forward. Where is the real receptivity? And I think the other side of that then for me is, as a leader and as someone who brings my authority or my leadership and then invites participation or invites discussion, that is also really, it's important for me to be clear about what I want in that interaction so that whoever I'm engaging with understands and can start to feel safe. And I need to be consistent with that, transparent with that, and do the work of finding out before I invite somebody to interact with me and then go, that's not what I wanted. And then the other thing, I think for me, I don't always know what that is. I've grown up in a culture where I wasn't ever supposed to know that. I'm not even supposed to have needs, and I'm not even supposed to know what works for me and what doesn't, and what I might request from other people. So I think that's a negotiable piece. So what I'm learning also is, as I learn how to perceive what those things are, then it is important to that this is like a negotiated piece. Right now, I think my needs are this. Oh, now I realize I also need this. Oh, now I realize this. And are you willing to do this? And allow the other person to have that kind of freedom also, so that we actually meet and share in a way that's co-satisfactory, that really opens both our hearts and allows the flow of information to be open and safe and rich. Yeah, that's what I want to say. I'm curious if you've found yourself wondering about this. Do you trust your own voice to speak, especially when there seems to be a structural power imbalance? Do you wait? Do you only say what you think is safe, because that way you're safe? Have you found ways to get your full voice in that kind of situation? What are those ways? Have you tried like setting up the guidelines in advance, like doing the work to realize, what do I want? What do I need? Let me make that clear and ask for that, so that my listener or my co-participant can consent to that or not. And maybe it's a yes and, or maybe it's not that, but I can do this. And there can be a negotiation where, okay, before we actually engage, we can get this agreement. And then hopefully what that does is it really makes it much more likely that the encounter will be safe, and that we'll be able to feel comfortably invited to share ourselves, and to know that we're going to be okay doing that. Well, I hope that's helpful or useful or provoking for you, and I'd love to hear your own ideas about it, your responses or reactions to anything I'm shared here, and to be continued.